Okay, we're recording, so we're ready to go.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 6th Public Safety Committee meeting being held virtually. This is actually our December meeting that was postponed until today. Kelly, can we have roll call?
Sure. Chairman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman Ebeling.
Here.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Right.
Okay, all members present.
Thank you. Move on to the approval of the agenda. If there are no changes, can we approve by acclamation? If so, all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone oppose? All right, it'd be so. This is where we move on to citizen comment, item number 3. If you're out there, let Kelly know by raising your hand, and we will let you state your name and address if you like, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Kelly is.
Hey, this is Brandon. I don't have a hand raised, but
Okay, Brandon, go ahead.
yeah, this is Brandon Wegge, 8537 Douglas Court. Hey, I sent over some traffic data that was collected in October on the section of Rosalie just east of Brentwood Boulevard. And I want to bring that to make sure that we're getting visibility on that data, because I think it showed some alarming speeds going through that section. That has been an issue with residents as long as I can remember of what's going through there. And it's great to have data now to support the issues that are there. And one of the recommendations was to, aggressive measures be taken for traffic calming there. And I just want to make sure as public safety is revisiting the traffic calming toolkit and looking at problem areas, that section of Rosalie is a top priority. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Brandon.
Terry Johnson has her hand raised.
Hello, Terry.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, Terry Johnson, 8723 Rosalie, right where all the people are speeding up and down our street. I was very alarmed when I read that traffic study. I know they're going fast, but to see someone doing 74 and the volume of cars on our street, it is extremely scary. It is very afraid to walk your dog, for the kids to be outside. We have lots and lots of children on the street, and I pray that something can be done to slow these people down. I can yell, please slow down. They just give me the finger and speed up. So we need the city to help us do something because between the construction on our section of Rosalie and the speeding, it's not a fun place to live any longer. I appreciate anything you guys can do. Policemen, speed bumps, anything and everything. I mean, it's tickets. I've talked with Major Hawkins over the years. I've talked to Brandon Wegge over the years, and it is just getting worse and worse. And I really appreciate something being done, please.
All right. Thank you, Terry. Kelly, anyone else?
Nobody else has their hand raised at this time.
Okay. If anybody comes on board, or if any of the citizens that spoke want to speak again, we'll have another citizen comment at the end of the meeting. Move on to item number 4, City Administrator Report.
I have nothing.
And we'll move on to report of committee chair and alderman. I just have a couple of things. I guess the first is just to let the citizens know that last spring we installed a speed cushion at Pine and Hatton, and we're kind of going through what is called a test phase right now to see how it performs, and during the winter months, how we're going to handle it with snow. I know Chief Curtin has some concerns with that and getting the truck over the hump, or the cushion rather. So kind of in our test phase right now. But the aldermen voted at our last board meeting to increase from 25,000 to 50,000 for different types of traffic calming devices. So we'll be looking at that once we get through this test phase of the one on Pine and Hatton. The other thing is, Brandon mentioned, we have a traffic calming toolkit that, staff and ourselves worked pretty hard to come up with, to create actually. And I think we can probably tweak that a little bit. Since then, Dan has come up with a data collector, traffic data collector, which is newer technology that we really didn't have in front of us when we created this traffic calming kit. So I would kind of like to just get a feel from the committee about maybe sending this back to Dan and the rest of staff for our later in January meeting to kind of tweak this toolkit. And so it's not quite a motion, but I just want to at least have a committee discussion on whether you all want to go down that road with this toolkit. Anybody have any?
Want to discuss now?
Well, not now. Just in favor of sending it to staff to start investigating tweaking this toolkit. David?
So I just have a question. I'm in favor of talking about it now. The tweaking that you're talking about, are you talking about streamlining it from that early stage where there's all that data collection, there's all those procedures having to do with data collection and things like that? Is that kind of where you're focused on?
Yeah, kind of from start to finish, actually.
Okay.
And, you know, I think we could kind of use this data we have from the Rosalie location kind of as our test, you know, put this into the toolkit and see how it performs. We can get it to work better.
I mean, to your point, I think there's already recommendations for specific tools within the kit,
Right.
within that report. Right. Okay, thank you.
Sunny?
I would support tweaking. I think that's a great idea to have staff look at it. I know we spent a lot of time on developing that toolkit. At the last Board of Aldermen meeting, there was a claim made that people have not had success, or maybe they sputter into inactivity with this toolkit, and I have no idea if that's true or not. So I would ask that be explored, ruled out, affirmed, one way or the other, as well in this review.
Okay. Good. Well, Pat, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Well, then I guess I just asked for a yay or a nay as far as sending this back to staff for them to, have Dan chew over and then come back to us with some recommendations on how we can better streamline this. David?
I'll make the motion that we do precisely that, and as you suggested, or maybe it was Sunny that suggested, using the Rosalie report from last fall as the test kit, whereby they could do this tweaking and come back to us later this month for our regular January meeting with some recommendations we can act on or forward to the board for further action if it's needed. Is that something, would that be?
Yep.
Okay.
That's perfect.
I'll make that motion.
Sunny, you said you second?
Yep.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose? All right. Thank you very much. Move on to committee, to committee members. Alderman Plufka, any comments?
The only comment I would make is similar to kind of what you said with regard to the budget process last month. We also tweaked our budget to include enough money to support a police officer in 2021. I know one of my reasons for wanting to do that, and I'm glad we got it passed, is that once we determine we can afford it, and I think we have to wait and see how things continue to go with COVID and its effect on our ability to collect sales tax revenue. But once we're relatively confident we're through that, I would really like the committee to take up the idea of hiring an officer, specifically with an idea of making it a traffic enforcement officer, at least during the daylight hours, and see if we can't not only use the traffic calming kit to good benefit after it gets tweaked, but also to amplify that with a more dedicated police presence in the streets, going after speeders and people that are driving through stop signs and all of the different stories that we saw on social media over the last several days. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat, Edeline?
Yeah, the only thing I noticed was we used to have a lot of people racing through here. And when you kind of up the police riding around, I notice that when I sit on the bench, they don't run the stop sign as much and they don't go as fast. So I think just seeing police calms people down.
Okay, thank you. Alderwoman Sims?
Only a comment on what's been discussed, in addition to evaluating whether we should, assuming we jump through the hurdle of can we afford an additional officer, and then what type of officer do we hire? I would like to hear from the chief, what does he think he needs in terms of the type of officer we hire? Maybe it's not just traffic. Should it be retail? Should it be something that's devoted to minimizing car clotting at night, which isn't really a traffic issue? So I'd like to just expand that analysis, not just looking at traffic.
Okay, well, we can take that up when the time comes. All right, we'll move on to department reports. Start with the fire department. Chief Curtin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a very brief report tonight. I just wanted to update the committee on our status with COVID. Overall, in St. Louis County, we found out today that the numbers in the public are starting to decline a little bit. But in the fire service in St. Louis County, they're still at relatively alarming levels. Fortunately, and I'm knocking on wood as I say this, we're doing pretty well. We had a couple of close calls recently, but everybody, we're staff minus one that is still out, remains out, has been out since August. He's battling to come back, but it's been an uphill battle, and he's had some setbacks. So I wanted to share that with you all, that we were hanging in there and things were going all right, but it remains a stressful environment around the firehouse. The second thing I wanted to just share with you all was how proud I was of the crews for coming up with the idea of the firefighter Santa parade. Our shop members did a tremendous job, and I think the success that I've heard throughout the neighborhoods has been tremendous, and so kudos to them. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the police department for their participation and assistance. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. That's all I have, sir.
Anything for the fire chief? All right, thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to police department. Chief Spees?
Yes, sir. I wanted to start off and just do a brief crime report regarding recent crime and the yearly where we were at from 2020. The recent crime totals coming out of the last week, we're down through the holidays. Good thing, obviously. We did have one significant case, a robbery case, somebody buying something off of a service like Craigslist. It wasn't Craigslist, but somebody ordered up a phone and got robbed on the parking lot of the Best Buy. The detectives are looking at the case. It's kind of complicated. It appears that the phone was also stolen. So, like all these, we have to kind of look at it with face value. Had a couple warm-up steals in the last couple of weeks. These have been going on all over the St. Louis community again. So we've pushed out messaging through Janet to try and help with that. Cars, leave them unlocked. There are groups of kids that go out, typically go out in the evening or late night rather, and they're doing cars, and this is how they finish their little run of crime, is to try and steal a car in the early morning hours. So overall, numbers from 2020 to 2019, there are a couple areas of concern that I want to share with you. We are particularly concerned with, and that's nighttime crime. We're up in they aren't really car breaking at night. I've covered that ad nauseum for you guys over the last 3 years, but these car go-throughs, they're being done by people that are potentially very I sent another snippet today, one from through the person's driveway, clearly armed with a gun. These videos are these guys are very
Chief, I don't mean to interrupt, but we're having a hard time hearing you. Is there any way to mute Terry Johnson, maybe? I can't, you're muted.
I'm trying here.
Or Terry, can you mute yourself?
I'll try. I didn't know I was on. I didn't know I wasn't muted.
Yeah, we're picking up background, I think.
I don't have anything on my house going on. I'm listening to you guys. Hold on. Hold on.
I'm trying.
I was on. Well,
You had it. Okay. All right, Chief, go ahead.
So the comparison from 2020 to 2019, you start looking at the nighttime crime. We're up in a couple categories that are concerning. One of them is the car issues. Stolen autos we're up considerably in stolen autos. And the last one that is of concern is business break-ins that happen late at night. So we've gotten some progress on investigations of the vault break-in that we had this a couple months ago, but that's at least 3 times that the vault's been hit. And again, these are late night burglary events that happen 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. They're typically shattering windows and doors, going in and stealing tires from Dobbs and then high-end stuff from the vault. We had a laundromat hit. So these are all criminal acts that occur late at night that we're challenged to address on our night watches. So one of the questions, and if I could spend just a minute to answer Alderwoman Sims' question regarding, I guess, prioritization of what we look at if we were to receive another officer. CPSM, the study that was done a couple of years ago that the city followed closely, and we followed closely in the police department when I got hired here almost 3 years ago, recommended that the retail areas be paid more attention to. And we did assign an officer there for the last few months, and it's worked out very well in terms of being liaison with our businesses that we didn't have. Information sharing's increased greatly with her doing that job. So there definitely is value. I think when you really look at the city and try and determine where that officer's time would be best spent, to be honest with you, the most complaints we're getting at this point are traffic related. So if that's collectively where the emphasis wants to be from both you as elected officials, from the people that we're listening to, like Terry on the call tonight, then we're fine with that. We will assign somebody to a traffic division position, I guess you would call that, if needed or as needed. As we do it now, just so that everybody understands, Major Hawkins assigns these details really based on citizen complaints. So we've been on Rosalie now for months. That doesn't mean we sit there for 8 hours a day, every day, but it means it's paid attention to, especially during the rush hours every day. McKnight's been a real challenge for us, as everybody on this call and the Public Safety Committee knows, and we've been on McKnight extensively. So a lot of the traffic that's being done is being done by our day watch officers. Unfortunately, the calls for service call them away from those traffic details at times, because those are really our busiest times for calls for service, is the day watch hours. And so it's kind of a complicated process. Having somebody pulled away to do traffic is a challenge. But again, if that's the priority, and if that's what the city and the elected officials and the people that are living on Rosalie and other streets really want, then we can do that. An officer to do nothing but traffic details and have him or her work days to do that. So that is where we're headed. Quite frankly, we've seen enough complaints at this point that we know these traffic issues are here. At some point, it just comes down to bodies. Again, everyone also knows, Alderwoman Sims, I think to further expand on your question, when I got here 3 years ago, the big complaint was that people didn't see officers in their neighborhoods. And every officer to this day, every officer is required to ride every street in the city of Brentwood as part of their patrol every day. And we can show through the GPS and through calls for service as they call out and contracted patrols in each neighborhood that that's being done. So again, if we're shifting, then I need to really hear that from you, honestly, that this is something that we want to look at traffic as being the priority, because for the last couple of years, those neighborhood patrols have really been popular. I mean, we hear a lot of good feedback seeing the officers in our neighborhoods at night and during the day. So we're sitting with 20 officers that ride the street, 2 of which are out right now with significant injuries. I've told you that. We've got another officer that's down with COVID, and she's going to be out for an extended period of time. So juggling these 20 bodies to try and do everything that we're trying to do is a challenge. And we appreciate Alderman Plufka's recommendation for another officer. If that's the direction that we go, we're able to get that officer and that becomes a traffic position, then we can certainly do that. So Angie can share with you the Rosalie detail of traffic. The officers are writing tickets up there. They're calling out service, and they're in that area regularly, daily. But we can't sit there for 8 hours a day on Rosalie, because there's 10 areas of traffic that we need to pay attention to. And then there's our retail calls for service, riding our retail areas. Just over the last month during the holidays, our retail areas were being hit by car break-ins with window smashings. Well, there's only one way to affect that. And that's get our day watch officers into those areas and be visible and ride the garages and ride the lots. Well, what suffers then? Suffers, the traffic end suffers. So this is the kind of juggling that we do on a daily basis. We pay very close attention to it. Angie Hawkins, Major Hawkins, does a good job really daily assigning officers the different tasks that we think are most important. So it's not that we don't think traffic's important. It is very important, especially here in Brentwood in areas that are being, and you see these reports that Dan provides. A lot of people are really looking at the 74-mile-an-hour Rosalie speeder hits. That was one car that happened over the course of months. And I know that's really fast. I don't even know what it was. But Rosalie is definitely a challenge. So as we look toward the next few months, we can assign an officer to traffic, but it lessens our ability to be able to ride these neighborhoods. It lessens our ability to be able to do retail enforcement activity. I think all of these things are important, but I want to be crystal clear on this, and I shared this with Bola today. Our nighttime crime is a challenge. And if you look at what is potentially the most alarming violent act that could happen, it will happen at night with these guys that are doing car break-ins. So that's a big challenge for us as well. So how do we juggle that into this mix of traffic, retail response to day watch officers, and then covering our neighborhoods sufficiently and effectively at night to try and affect that nighttime crime that comes with guys carrying guns, willing to use them. So these are all the challenges, so we're up to the task, but the reality is there's only so many bodies to do these things. And as I look at this as your chief, I would tell you that violent crime piece is alarming to me, because I'm seeing it happen throughout our entire St. Louis community. So we look very closely at that on how we can do a better job of affecting it. And then obviously the retail theft and the traffic on the day watch are big challenges, along with answering the radio. We get a lot of radio calls during the day watch here in Brentwood. And those radio assignments are up for 2020 as compared to 19. So all of this is in the mix, and this is what we get paid to do. We try to manage it as best we can. We feel we're doing a good job. That body that you're talking about, that Alderman Pluff has recommended, yes, we could put that person directly into a traffic division or traffic assignment, and could do it permanently. And it would, it would make the traffic issues better. It's not going to fix it. Quite frankly, traffic enforcement by law enforcement is sporadic in terms of how it affects people slowing down. Because even if we have one officer doing nothing but traffic, he or she can't be on all these locations all the time. We go to the hot spots, we hit the hot spots and write tickets, but this has to be a traffic calming effect. I think that's clear. The speed pads that you're buying, big piece of that. Signage, using our messaging boards, all pieces of that puzzle. And we're doing all those things. And Dan's been a big help to us with analyzing and moving those things forward. So, it's encouraging to see this being looked at as more of a holistic way of affecting these traffic issues, because even with a full-time officer in a traffic division, we're still going to hear complaints. It's that simple, because we can't be everywhere at all times. So I'd be happy to answer any questions relative to any of that.
Any questions for the chief this time? All right, well, thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Move on to Public Works. Dan, you've got an update from a request regarding street lighting in Ward 1 and Ward 4.
Correct. If everyone recalls at the board meeting, there was some requests for clarification regarding the street lights. Where are they going in 21, specifically the carryovers from Ward 1 and then moving forward in Ward 4. I don't know if you want me to share the screen and do the presentations, if you've already read them. I don't want to bore you with going through the slides. If you have specific questions on one set of presentation versus the other, or if you just want me to open it up.
I probably just, I think people just want to know, the committee members want to know, where we're at right now and what we're going to do to get this wrapped up.
Okay. Yeah, it's simple enough. So for Ward 1, for York Village in particular, if you look through that presentation, I kind of went through a executive summary. So there's an overview. There were 5 light locations that were selected. We ordered those solar lights last year. They were delivered to Public Works. They're here in storage. 2 other locations were looked at on York Hills Drive, but those weren't part of the original list that was presented to the Public Safety Committee way back when. And then actually, there's a slide that shows the solar light design, just so everybody kind of knows. And then I indicated where the locations were. So these were the preferred locations. So 10 York Drive, 18 York Drive, 24 Northcote, 69 York Drive, and 54 York Drive. So basically you've got 10 and 18 York Drive, or the York that's closest to I-64 near the blinking stop sign for point of reference. And then the other one, 69 and 54, are the other York Drive further south from I-64. And then Northcote would be the street just to the south of the MoDOT sound wall. So to help you kind of see that on a map, I scanned in a map with some orange highlight and a little blue dot. Again, that's an approximation. If people tell us they don't want it there, then of course we called in locates for other alternate locations. So if you go out there, I think it was earlier this week, maybe Monday, the utilities are marked. So you'll see gas, you see yellow paint for gas, blue for water, so on and so forth for Missouri 1 call. And what we're trying to do is this week I'll go out, I'll put a stake in the ground, and then we'll meet with those property owners and see if they're receptive to where we've called out those locations. If they tell us no, we'll move it to the alternate and then talk with those folks. So steps moving forward, January, February, as in that slide we mentioned, we were going to call Missouri 1 call. We did do that. We prepared the letter to the residents and trustees. Those were sent out. We will field locate the proposed streetlight foundations based on where the utilities are and where we feel the light should go. And then we'll meet with those property owners. We'll get an acceptable location, hopefully. And then we'll have easements developed around those acceptable locations. So if, say for instance, 10 York is receptive, then we'll have TWM draw up the easement and prepare that exhibit so that the person can sign it, and that'll give us the right for ingress, egress to put the foundation in. And then moving forward, as soon as it's warm enough, and the easements are executed, we'd call the locates in again, just to make sure nothing's been put in since we last called. And then pretty much everything else we can do in-house. So from drilling the foundation hole, placing the forms in there, the hardware, pouring the concrete, letting it cure, and then renting a lift. That's what we did on the other street lights that we put in. We rented a lift, anchored everything in place, cleaned up the job site, and then activated the lights. So you're looking at March, April for that. And then the rest of the presentation for Ward 1 was just, images out in the field, the individual properties and a little red dot of where we thought the light should go. So I don't know if you have questions on that.
Well, there's a resolution. Is this to engage TWM?
It would be to add to the contract with TWM because we don't actually have easements, but because they're already under contract doing other survey services, this would be a change order to add that additional work, and then it would come out of my capital budget. And that'll be, I'll type up that information and we'll need to present that to the board in order to engage TWM for that work.
Do we know a cost?
I believe it was a little over $7,000 for all 5 locations. And that was to mark everything up because you have to define the meets and bounds description, your degrees, minutes, seconds, go around the property, create that sliver where the light goes, and then execute that with the resident and get it recorded. So they would take that to the courthouse. And then if the property gets sold, you've got a recorded easement for that light for perpetuity's sake.
Anyone have questions for Dan on this? David?
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned about York Hills. So I know, we have actually 7 of the solar lights that have been delivered, right?
That is correct.
So to bring up in committee or elsewhere, the idea that the York Hills, the 2 locations that are in those little triangles, not in anybody's yard, but in the middle of the street, essentially, that'd be something we would do like in a round 2 or a round 3 or something like that with regard to this lighting program.
That's up to the committee. Again, it wasn't part of the original. I believe there were 34 lights. I mean, this is going back 2 years.
Right.
The other 5 were, but I looked at those and we took light measurement levels, and those were low level light areas, those islands in particular you're speaking of.
Okay, but those are in stock, so to speak, and available to us, and presumably, or at least theoretically, the trustees will be easier to deal with than a homeowner with regard to an easement, since the trustees control those triangles. I just was thinking out loud, trying to figure out what to report back to them in terms of what the future might be for York Hills. It's not in this, it's not in what you're doing right now, obviously.
Right, unless I'm directed otherwise, it wasn't in the
I'm
original.
not suggesting you should be, and I'm not asking you to be. I just want to make sure I'm clear talking to the trustees. It's not in the 5 you already are looking at right now, clearly, right? I mean, this is a separate, the 2 York Hills locations are a separate thing that has to, it's my responsibility or somebody's responsibility to bring them forward at some later time, I guess.
Correct. And I thought, well, if some of these other ones fall by the wayside, like if I can't get an agreement on number 10 or number 14 or whatever it is within that intersection that I've highlighted, then to me, it makes sense that you would say, well, as an alternate, how about you put it over here? So it still has utility and value. And like you said, you're dealing with trustees instead of individual private owners that they want a light, but then they don't want a light by them.
Right, not in my backyard, literally, front yard. Okay, great. So if that does occur, you'll tell us, you'll let us know that you just ran into a roadblock with a particular owner or particular owners, and
right. That's what we did the last time we flagged the spreadsheet. I've got a spreadsheet with all these points, and like number 14, I know is a no-go. The person didn't want it whatsoever, so I'm looking at 10. But if 10 says no, I've got one other chance, and if that one, fails for whatever reason, they don't want to do it, well, now I've got a spare one to consider somewhere else.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Dan, you've got Ward 4 also?
Correct. Similarly, there's a PowerPoint presentation for that, since there was a question as to how many were going in there. And looking back through the notes with Brentwood Forest, it looks like there's 7 locations. So there'd be one near the intersection of Brentwood and North Swan Circle, another one near, it says Redbird Cove and Brentwood, which can't really find that. And then 3 locations at Cove entrances along East Swan Circle. So 1613 East Swan, 1638, 1540 East Swan Circle, those entrances to those coves. And then an entrance to a cove near 8929 Cardinal Terrace, and then Renwood Lane between High School and Brentwood on the lake side of the gazebo. So I tried to show a couple sample photos there. Renwood itself, there's actually lights on the north side. Those are old Cobra heads, or not old. Some are old, they're the old metal halides, and then others are LEDs. So what I thought we could do there is I had marked which ones out in the field. I took pictures and wrote it down in my notes, but basically figured out which ones were old technology and which ones were new. And I thought we could approach Ameren. It's fairly inexpensive to upgrade to the LED. If it fails on its own, they just automatically upgrade it and don't charge us. But if it hasn't failed and we just wanted an improved light, they'll do it for a fee. And since the infrastructure is already in, it's usually just a couple $100, you know, like literally $200 or less. So it's pretty inexpensive. What I also considered, I looked over on Eager Road at the dead end, at the west dead end that is, there's a Cobra head on the Richmond Heights side, but it's a much longer arm. It's probably an 8-foot long Cobra head. So I thought, well, if they could possibly increase the length of some of these on Renwood and change them to newer technology, that might get you better lighting on the south side, which has the sidewalk that parallels the lake. You know, just a thought. I don't want to throw too much light across the lakeside because I'm afraid it would reflect on the surface of the water and maybe make people upset that like the dim conditions where their condominium backs up to the lake. I'm not sure, but you know, we'll see what we can improve along the Renwood side.
Okay.
And then moving forward, there's just a few steps since we're less far along, if that makes sense. So I left a message for Kent. We'll get together, you know, Brentwood Forest, that is, confirm a couple ones that need a little bit of, I guess, better detail so I can clarify it myself. And then we'll measure those ambient light conditions like we did in the past so we can kind of develop a prioritization. You know, of course, the dimmer ones we'll want to do before the ones that have not adequate light, but less light, I guess. The ones that have the least amount of light we would do first. And then we'll identify those locations. I had looked at possibly solar. Since there's so many trees in Brentwood Forest, that doesn't lend itself easily to solar. Versus in York Village, the trees are spaced out further apart, the lots are bigger. That lends itself better to solar. I'm not saying it's impossible, it's just more of a challenge. And then we'll request the improvements of those lights along Renwood Lane. I'll get with Ameren. I've got the form printed out. I just need to write the light number down and have them give me a cost. And then it would just come out of the capital line, you know, assuming it's under, you know, $2,000, you know, I guess it could just be a warrant list item, but if it's more than that, you know, we'll certainly bring it about to the committee.
Okay. Pat?
It sounds good, Dan. I appreciate you doing all that.
Okay, yeah, it's no problem. We'll, and we can provide, like, for next month's meeting, you know, how far we've gotten, you know, kind of check these steps off, which ones we've completed. You know, maybe I'll just gray out the items on these slides as they get completed, just to give you a blow by blow of what we've done and how much we have left to do.
That'd be great, Dan, if you could do
That
that.
sounds good.
Okay.
Any other questions for Dan on this issue? Because we got them all night long here.
That's right.
Hold on, Dan. I guess actually we need to go over the consent agenda first. Or wait a minute, I thought we had Strassner, was that?
It is, it's 6D. According to mine, I haven't refreshed it in a while, but.
Yeah, and this was a request by Alderman Plufka to look at that stop sign on Strassner.
Yeah, I tried to work this by looking at historical information, which I kind of ran into an impasse there. So I couldn't find, like, I know for point in fact, there was a stop sign there years ago. I know when I worked in Hanley Industrial, like 03, 04, 05, it was there. I don't know when it was taken down. I couldn't figure that out. So I thought I'd work it in reverse. If there is none there now, what are the considerations to add one? You know, does it need one, in other words? So we put the data collector out there. collected data for roughly a 10-day period. And then from that 10-day period, I ran different reports. You know, if anybody opened the one report up, it's massive. There's literally thousands of pages of raw data points. And then using the software, it'll actually give you something that makes more sense, so to speak. So I actually looked at the different directions. You know, the traffic analysis report is basically an executive summary of what the data collector saw over that 10-day period. So speed limit that's posted out there is 25 miles per hour. 85th percentile speed is 30. So 85% of your cars are traveling at 30 miles per hour or less. The other 15% are higher, 50%. So half are doing 27 or less, the other half are greater. Average speed, you know, 26.6 miles per hour. And then when you see these outliers, it's no different than, say, like a Rosalie or something. You've got a few people that really went fast through there. It's still not at Rosalie level, it's 59. Someone else did 57. If you look at the total counts per day, the average daily traffic is little over 5,300 vehicles a day. And that's in both directions that this thing is recording. So that's during weekdays. Weekends, it drops a little bit. It's 5,047 vehicles Saturday, Sundays on average. So you can see that the numbers are fairly close, which to me indicates that it's a through street. It's not just during business that people commute back there and then on weekends they don't do anything. You know, they're always traveling in this corridor. And then looking at that, I compared that to the MUTCD requirements for a stop sign to see, you know, does this justify the need for a stop sign? So in the memo, you'll see some of the criteria. So it'll say, you know, vehicular traffic volumes on the through street or a highway exceed 6,000 vehicles per day. So we don't meet that. We're in the 5,000 to 5,300 vehicles per day. Then when you look at item B, a restricted view exists that requires road users to stop in order to adequately observe conflicting traffic on the through street or highway. That condition doesn't exist either. But then going to crash reports, do crash reports indicate that 3 or more crashes that are susceptible to correction by installation of a stop sign have been reported within a 12-month period, or that 5 or more such crashes have been reported within a 2-year period? And these would be right angle crashes where the minor street, you know, coming off of Strassner, that those folks didn't yield and hit the through street. So looking at the crash data that the police gave us over the past 5 years, like in 2020, there were only 2 crashes reported. And that was reported about a month or so ago. I don't know if there was anything in December since then, but at the time of this report, 2. For 2019, there were 5. So that would kind of trigger item 3, or C rather. And then for 2018, I'm not really sure why there were so many. There were 13. In 17, there were 4. In 16, there were 4. So you've got that one strange year, 2018, where there were, you know, probably double, triple what is normal. But if you're just looking at the last 2 years, it's close. It's kind of on the bubble. But looking at the other data, I didn't really see a reason. So in my recommendation, I just put, depending on other traffic calming priorities for 21, it could be possible to consider a stop sign if accident frequency increases. Stop signs are not recommended as speed control devices. And it doesn't appear that this needs to be a stop sign on Strassner near the inline park. So I didn't really think that it was needed at this time. And again, if something changes, we'll certainly be receptive and look at that data. And we can always run the counter. Again, this is during COVID. So those 5,000 vehicles per day, I don't know, it could go up to over 6,000 if we get to a normal period where people are commuting to work again, not quarantined or at home working. That could change.
And Dan, these 3 criteria that you're using, the MUTCD, could you refresh our memory on what that is?
Yeah, sorry about that. It's the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So that's that comes about from the federal government. It's part of the Federal Highway Administration, this criteria guidebook. It's all online. So if you go to section 2B.06, that's your stop sign application. So it basically gives engineers an idea of when you would put in a stop sign or a yield sign. And in this case, it's, you know, the stop sign that I'm analyzing. You know, am I meeting these criteria?
Okay, thanks. Pat, you have a question?
Yeah. Dan, the problem there is not, I don't think, speed so much, is that if you're trying to turn left out of that street where they took the stop sign down. I
Right.
took this up with Alderman Kramer a couple of years ago, but I got nowhere. And you have to see both ways, but they don't stop coming either way. And that's how I got hit. She was looking one way and then she decided to go and she ran, you know, right into me. She said, I didn't see you. And I can see when you're looking both ways like that and the traffic is heavy. This was about 3:30. It's just really hard to pull out of there. Or it isn't now because there's no traffic over there. But when, you know, when in normal circumstances. So that was the problem. It isn't that they go so fast, it's that you just can't scoot in between cars like that very easily. I'll just give you that for a background.
Thank you, Pat. Sonny?
This is right around the corner from where I live. And respectfully, I have to disagree with Alderwoman Ebeling. I've never had any issues at this intersection. I've said at the offset when we analyze these traffic measures that, you know, we should be data driven. And I think based upon the analysis that Dan has put forward, you know, the section doesn't meet the criteria for a stop sign. My anecdotal experience has been more that the stop sign that is in place at the Y is just disregarded. You know, people are gunning for that light on Brentwood. I mean, and I turn out of that neighborhood. I've not been in a car accident, but I am mindful that anyone who's there is probably going to blow the stop sign. But I mean, I think that we have data, we have standards. I've never had any. I mean, I use that. I'm probably on that street a couple times or once a day. I mean, I use it, and I've never really experienced any issues. The traffic, appears to be infrequent enough, or if you need to turn left or turn on to Strassner, I've not experienced any sight issues. So I wouldn't be in favor of putting a stop sign at this location.
David?
I agree with Alderwoman Sims. I want to be driven by data as well. I commend Dan for all his work and the thoroughness of this report. I appreciate the fact that he took the time to go through all of the criteria and give us a very thoughtful analysis of what's going on there. And I'm willing to be guided by it. My suspicion about the 2018 thing is, if my memory serves me correctly, wasn't that the year that we were resurfacing Brentwood Boulevard for a long period of time, and maybe that threw more traffic onto Strassner? And perhaps that's why you got that anomalous result with regard to some additional accidents back in that year. Perhaps volume on the road then was higher too, temporarily. I agree that, you know, we might come back and look at this again at some point, you know, way down the road, if in fact we got kind of depressed numbers because of COVID. But other than that, I say to Dan, I think you did a great job, and I appreciate all the hard work putting this report together.
Yeah, I ditto that too, Dan. Well, then I guess, I mean, we can put this to a vote, or we can just let it die. Pat, do you have any problems with?
No, I don't have any problems. As I said, right now, you know, I don't have any problems with it. But a couple of years ago, you know, I did. The other thing is, when all those trucks are parked in that one parking lot, which they aren't now because I don't know, they're not working, I guess, or they're working from home. You can't see somebody coming down the hill if you're short personed in a small car.
Well, like as Dan said, we can revisit it if traffic picks up.
Yeah,
after COVID.
that's fine.
Okay.
It's pretty easy to install the device, and then we've got the
Yeah.
software, and then it's just a matter of recording it and sifting through it.
All right, thanks for doing all that, Dan.
Yeah, and the one item that's not in the department report, but just to give you a heads up, the radar feedback sign that we had ordered and received in December, we did install that on High School between Madge and Litzinger on northbound High School. So if you drive through there on your way home or whatever, you'll see it. It works. I finally got the company the information they needed. They had it accidentally logged into the account for Brentwood, California, not Brentwood, Missouri. So I could never see it and get it to like basically connect with my software and work. It was in like a stealth mode where it would flicker and show that the battery worked and everything, but not actually give you a display. Now it actually, the display works. So we do have a spare sign, and that one's charged up, but I don't know where we want to put it exactly. It's just available in case we want to put in a post somewhere and try it out and move it around.
Well, if they send us a bill, send it out to California then.
Right. Yeah, because they mentioned a Sacramento Way or something like that for a street that it was on. I'm like, no, I don't think there's one of those in our town.
Thanks, Dan. All right, we move on to item 7. It's the consent agenda. The only thing on there was the minutes. If there's no changes to the minutes, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Looks like
Dave. Second.
David and Sunny second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we'll move on to, we have old business. And this was an item brought up by Mayor Dimmitt regarding the crossing to go to Tillis Park by Sonora. And evidently there's people not abiding by, even when the lights are flashing, stopping for pedestrians. So Dan, you were investigating with Ladue on some things we could possibly do there.
That's correct. I tried to, in the memo, I gave you a background. You know, we did have CBB do the joint traffic study with Ladue and us. And I put in there, you know, the minimum requirements or minimum options that they thought we should do, as well as the 3 design alternatives. You know, design alternatives used traffic signals. You know, those are fairly expensive solutions. Some of the minimal solutions, you know, painting and widening a lane, that can get expensive as well. So what we thought we would do is just look at how do you slow people down in that area that they'll actually be able to stop in time so that someone can use the blinker signs, you know, that are there, that you can push a button and actuate. So we looked at 2 possible locations, which is on your map, the little arrowheads. One was at the north end and, you know, closer to, actually it'd be south of the flashing stop sign. So that would be just south of the York Drive all the way to the north. And then the other location was down by this crosswalk, which is just south of Sonora into the eastern side of Tillis Park. So I had notified Ladue about this request, and they did not say no. They said that their mayor would like to consider it as well. And it will advance to their meeting, which is their public works meeting, and that's scheduled for February 3rd. So I tried to put into my memo the criteria that we're looking for a joint solution. So again, Ladue's Public Works Committee is February 3rd. They're going to want to gather data on McKnight Road and Litzinger west of McKnight to determine existing volume and speed conditions. What they don't want to do is put in a solution there that's going to divert traffic to Litzinger going west of McKnight and make that worse, essentially, or shortcut it somewhere else. And then some of the other things that they requested was that they wanted to obtain some product data on these speed cushions to determine the life cycle. Since, you know, it's been as high as like 20,000 vehicles per day in this corridor. But whenever I look at our radar feedback sign, it gives me only northbound data. I can't get southbound because it's not programmed to cast a sonar signal that far, but just northbound is a little over 5,000 vehicles per day. So assuming southbound's roughly the same, you're only looking at say 10,000 and not 20. When I looked at 2019 data before COVID, we were looking at 15 to 17,000 vehicles per day. So it's still, it was high then, it's you know, tapered off quite a bit. some of the other things that they mentioned that they would like to see is a trial basis for this, 60 or 90 days, and then reevaluate to see what lessons are learned. Can they live with it? Would they leave it alone? Or does it need to be removed because, everyone despises it for whatever reason? And then they were willing to do a cost share for whatever improvements are acceptable to both parties, and that they wanted to install their improvements on their side because of the way their ordinances are written. They can't allow us to do it, but they would pay for their share of materials and equipment needed for this. And then it also, the one caveat was that they do not want to do it during winter months. So whenever it gets rolled out, they thought it wouldn't be until, say, April of 21 or so, whenever snow's no longer an issue and it can be safely put down without having, frozen precipitation or something on the surface. So we're, like I said, kind of in a holding pattern, waiting to see what they say coming up. And then after that, we'll bring it back. We should have it back for the next monthly public safety in February.
But once again, this is solely to bring attention to that crosswalk.
Correct. So I showed a picture of a speed cushion that's on Pine. So that's what we have now. That's a much smaller one than what you would see on, say, a McKnight, and that's because of the speed limit. Speed limit on Pine, that segment is 20 miles per hour. So this is roughly 6 feet in length, and it rises up 3 inches in the center of the hump. The rise would be the same for the one at McKnight, so 3 inches in the middle. However, due to the 30 mile per hour posted speed limit, the length of this is roughly 14 feet, 12 or 14. They're working on the actual numbers. So you're going to have way more holes drilled in there to anchor these little pads. And it's more of a gradual length, to slow you down, but it should reduce your speed down to about 20 miles per hour or less. And then it would also reduce your speed on either side of the cushion, because as soon as you go over it, you're not going to be going, 40 or 50 miles per hour. But it would allow those slots to exist for the fire pumper truck to ride through there. The only challenge I see is if you did do that, what happens during winter wonderland when people park on the shoulder queuing up, and then the slots aren't quite lined up the way you want them to be to get a truck through there. Since I know people that are queued on the shoulder extend over, the white stripe that's painted on the shoulder, and then people going northbound have to kind of swerve around the people coming southbound. So that would be something we would need to see how that goes too.
All right. Any questions for Dan on this? I have a question. Are we waiting on Ladue, or was this something that we needed to have put in front of the board later this month before this goes to Ladue's Public Works?
I think that a motion can be made in such a manner so that once Ladue has a chance to take this up and approve it, a recommendation or a vote has already been made by the Board of Aldermen. So it could be something along, the board authorizes Dan to go forward with the installation of the speed cushions in concurrence with City of Ladue, something along those lines. Yeah.
Okay. So we need to take action tonight.
Yeah.
To get it on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Okay. And, all right. Well, anybody want to make that motion?
Alderman Lockmuller?
Or, yes.
I know I'm not on the committee, but would you do what Alderwoman Sims did for Ways and Means and recognize non-committee Board of Aldermen to ask some questions?
Sure. Go ahead, Nancy.
So I have a couple questions about it. One of the biggest complaints we get along about McKnight Road is the truck traffic. And I have a question about the width that you're talking about for the fire trucks. Would that then negate trucks from slowing down if they're like low parts for the fire trucks to get through easily? Would then trucks be able to get through easily and not slow down? Would it not slow them down?
Yeah, that's a good question. If they're the same width, if from face of tire to face of tire is the same as a pumper truck, in theory, you're right. It could slide through there, of course, you'd have to dodge around oncoming traffic because it would kick you into their lane, at least partially. You know, if say it's like a moving van or something, you know, or like an Amazon truck. I don't know what the width of an Amazon truck is with comparison to a pumper truck. I'm sure it's a little bit narrower, but if it could straddle it, then you're right. It wouldn't necessarily slow down. It would just straddle it like a fire truck and continue on. And that goes both ways, you know, whether they're coming southbound or northbound, if you can line up with those slots, so to speak.
If I may, I have a few more questions.
Sure, go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, so will it go, is the vision that it would go all the way into the shoulder part? I walk across this a lot, like 3 or 4 times a week when that gate's open. So would the speed hump go all the way into the shoulder? Because my concern is if it doesn't, then cars are just gonna swerve around into the shoulder section. And if you're trying to walk from Tillis Park back to the neighborhood, you have to stand on the shoulder to get across, and you know, but if somebody swerved, then they would swerve into you standing on the shoulder waiting to cross.
Yeah, because the east side shoulder is actually a bicycle lane, and it wouldn't extend all the way to the curb if that's the question, because it can't. Otherwise, it's going to block some of the flow of water because everything drains from north to south along McKnight. So I know someone said something about a raised crosswalk, which is not feasible because if you raised up the crosswalk, basically create like a speed hump across from curb to curb, where does the water go? If it's coming from north to south, it'll hit that bump and spill over and possibly back up into people's yards along Pine and other neighborhoods. So that wasn't really recommended. And then you'd probably have to put in like some sort of grate or slotted drain to try to divert it to the north of that if you did try to put that in. So that was why we didn't want to extend it all the way to the shoulder, but we would leave a big enough gap so that bicyclists could still go through there. But if you're a car, if you did put if you're going northbound, your passenger tires in that area that's open, it shouldn't be that the driver's side is in another slot. We'll have to look at the width and make sure that that can't happen.
I'm more concerned about the Ladue side, the south side, where the bicycle lane is on the west. I guess that's the west side. I'm more concerned about the west side of it.
Yeah, the west
The
side, the
Ladue
Tillis
side.
Park side, I was worried about making it too narrow as well because again of, you know, winter wonderland, cars are parked there. I really don't want someone parked on top of that cushion 24/7. The only other thought I had was maybe during winter wonderland, since it's just a few months, you just remove a couple, you know, make that a little bit skinnier there so that they're not damaging it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, as a pedestrian who uses that, I would feel pretty strongly that if it's there, it would need to extend into that bike lane area so that cars don't swerve into
Right.
the bike lane and make it more dangerous for those people using the shoulder. I think that's a dangerous.
Yeah, and I looked at the original CBB traffic study for that crosswalk, and they had proposed a concrete island that would be a refuge island, and it would have a slot in there where a pedestrian could push a stroller or, you know, bicycle or whatever. But it would basically be concrete on either side of you, and you would be standing in this little island. After the light, you know, blinks, you could walk across, and if someone didn't stop, at least you're standing in the middle in a secure area. But I don't know, that's probably not ideal either, I thought, because, you know, if a truck whizzes past you and you're just on this little island, it's not going to, you know, make you feel safe, I don't think.
Yeah, it doesn't seem wide enough for that, my editorial thing. And then I talked to you a while back about trying to see if we could put in the tall, skinny state law stop in the crosswalk signs. And you had sort of said that they couldn't go on the round push button on the Brentwood
Right, yeah,
side.
TAPCO did say that it should not go on there. What we could do, we'd have to get permission from Ladue because it would look kind of silly to put it just on one side. I know what you're saying. It would be like an arrow, or
Mhm.
not an arrow, but basically another warning sign, a skinny little warning sign.
Yeah, that's just a thought on a way that would remind people that this is state law and you need to stop. So.
Yeah, and I did look at it's an expensive option, but they do make in road bed LED lights. So what that would be is a series of blinking lights going from edge to edge, cutting perpendicular to the roadway, that when you press that button to activate the sign, it would flash lights across the roadway too. They said that what we have now, that solar collector is not large enough. You'd have to upgrade the system, but it's either that or you'd have to buy a whole new system and then move that one somewhere else. But that was another option, that they'd all work in unison. You press the button, it flashes on the signs, and then it flashes across the roadway. Those are low enough that plow blades can go over them without damaging them, but they're linked with the whole system so that they're all synchronized. It's pretty neat if you can do that.
And then finally, do Chief Speece or Chief Curtin have concerns about this on such a major road?
Chief Curtin, you want to chime in?
Absolutely. So I'm trying to work with the committee and the elected officials and create something that is doable for our department and others. This is going to affect not only our fire department, but other departments that are responding to provide mutual aid to us or somebody else that travels through that way. We've set up the speed cushion on Pine as a test plot area, and we have not gone through the winter season from the aspect of snow. It seems to be just fine for our truck setting the way it is on Pine. I don't believe there's a tremendous amount of difference in wheel widths on fire trucks, so I don't really anticipate much issue with slot sizes. We can work on that with Dan, but my feeling on this is that I recognize that you all are very concerned about this. We're trying to be cooperative and figure out a way jointly with everybody's input on how to make this work. My initial reaction is I think we can make this work fine. But again, I would really like to just get through a winter season with some snow and see how it impacts the one on Pine before I kind of give my final answer.
Thank you.
Chief Speece, do you have any concerns with this?
No, we don't, Alderman. And Alderwoman Tice, that we had a discussion today with Bola about looking at these devices in other cities. One of the places that we have looked at them closely is on Filer Avenue in St. Louis. It's a wide street, kind of similar to either Knight or Rosalie, and the challenges of speeding on them, and they've been very effective according to their police department in that area. So, and there's plenty of other areas and cities that are using them. So we would support it as long as the fire department doesn't have a problem with it. We are absolutely in support of it. They're there 24 hours a day, and we can't beat. So if they slow traffic down, I think they're a great idea.
Thank you. And thank you, Alderman Lockmiller, for letting me speak.
Sure. David?
Thanks. Steve, you asked earlier about somebody making a motion, or Bola, I think, suggested that we make a motion to bring this to the full board. I think because it was originally an idea that the mayor brought to the committee, or at least it was part of his idea, I think we should probably bring it to the full board, and I would make that motion, but I would make it saying that I'm not necessarily in favor of this. I appreciate the comments by both chiefs, and I appreciate the questions of Alderwoman Tice. To my mind, the biggest problem we have on McKnight Road is the volume and type of traffic that travels on McKnight Road. It's not suited for that volume. It's not suited for the giant vehicles, the delivery trucks that populate that road. I don't think this safety device impacts either one of those issues. And I don't think that speeding, for the most part, is a big issue on McKnight Road. I mean, I think it's an issue throughout the city of Brentwood. I think on our residential streets and everywhere, it is. We live in an area where people are trying to get from point A to point B, and it usually travels them right through the city of Brentwood. And so speeding is an issue for our city everywhere. But that being said, so to cut it short, I will make a motion to have this idea brought before the full board for a vote, and just as a procedural way for us to deal with it as a committee.
Have a second?
I will second it, but I share the sentiment of Alderman Plufka. And I'll wait till the discussion after that.
Well, the only thing I would add is it looks like Ladou's going to have some predications on this being a trial, that this is not something that's in, if, we buy the material and doesn't work out, we can use it in one of our streets somewhere else. And then the other thing is, one of the offshoots of this might be that it does cut down on volume. Maybe people don't want to go over it. Maybe it forces people over to Brentwood or one of the other major arteries. This is a good way to try it out, see what we get, the results out of it. So if there's not any other discussion, I guess we can put it to a vote to forward onto the board. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, well, thank you. We have no new business. We have citizen comment, the second one. Is there anybody out there, Kelly, wanting to make a comment?
I don't see any hands raised at this point.
All right, I think.
Wait a minute. Wait a
We
minute.
have Terry Johnson.
Terry's raised her hand. Mhm.
Terry, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to say thank you for listening to me before. I understand that speeding is very bad everywhere. I'm looking at what I hear outside my window and door, and when I walk my dog, and what all my neighbors and people in the neighborhood are telling me. And I was just trying to bring that to your guys' attention. I know no one can sit here for 8 hours a day, but I've lived in Brentwood my entire life. I lived on Rosalie for 28 years or 26, whatever, it's a long time. And it has gotten very, very bad. And the volume of traffic is just ridiculous for residential streets. So I would appreciate anything and everything you all can do. I appreciate all the hard work. If we could just all work together to make our streets safer, which I know you guys are doing, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Well, thanks for your input, Terry. Anybody else?
We have Jen Disbennett and Lois Truman. Both have their hands raised.
Okay.
Jen?
Jen, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jen Disbennett, and I also live on Rosalie Avenue in the 8700 block. And I have grown up in Brentwood, so I've been here for a while, and then now have moved back. But in this block, I just wanted to, unfortunately, I missed the comments at the beginning. I was in a work call, but I just also wanted to speak to the dangerous speeds that I have seen on driving on this street. And I live near Broughton Park, and there was a day there was a car that went, I can't even imagine how fast it was. It had to be like 60 miles an hour, completely ran the stop sign right at Broughton Park. Thank God they missed it, because not like 30 seconds later, there was a group of like people with children riding bikes that were crossing at the stop sign. And I've seen many cars that don't even slow down like at all and have just blown through the stop sign. I completely understand that the police can't be everywhere. I have personal connections with police officers in my family, so I completely understand that. But I do feel like, I do see the police presence driving around the neighborhoods, which is fantastic. But I don't see a lot of people. Like, I remember when I was young, I knew I stopped at that stop sign by Broughton Park because there was usually a police officer there waiting just to make sure. And I'm not seeing that as much. But I get that they can't be everywhere. It is terrifying for us living on this street with the volume of cars and the speed in which they are traveling, and the blind corner, or the blind hill, sorry, not corner, the blind hill on Rosalie in the 8700 block. The people coming from, like if they're coming from Hanley going towards Brentwood, I don't even see brake lights like that. They're even slowing down at that blind hill. They're just flying right over it. And I know I've almost been hit in my car coming there, because there's usually cars parked on the right-hand side. So,
all right.
Those are my comments. Thank you.
We have Lois.
Yeah. Oh, yep. There we go. Lois.
Gotta unmute yourself. Lois.
Sorry, yes. I just concur. Everybody has said, I was going to concur with Terry and now with Jen about that stop sign and the flow of, we have a whole lot of pedestrians on our street in all those areas that have been mentioned. So I commend you guys and this city for being proactive. I have nothing bad to say about anything that you are doing. I just commend you. That's all.
Thank you, Lois. Anybody else, Kelly?
That's it at this time.
All right, well, we get to do this all again on the 27th of this month. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.